If you've been doing the inner work but feel stuck somewhere in the process, or if you're curious about whether your blocks live in your head, heart, or body, this self-screening tool uses progressively challenging questions to reveal exactly where your edge is.
Okay, hey, this is Francisca and this is my mid-crisis life, and today is Chrysalis tools. So this week I made a video that was talking about kind of like understanding where we are in the process, and that having that objective kind of viewpoint can really help to contextualize and to detach us from these things that are happening. I was talking about, the process that adolescents go through, and actually everything's just on track, right? And there's a way that I could perceive my teenage son's behavior as rude and infuriating or rejecting or whatever, but actually through being able to understand that he's on a certain process, he's in a certain process, it allows it to not feel so personal, basically. So I said something at the end of Monday Mindset, where I said, we're going to do a process where we're going to do a practice where we're going to look at like help to identify what process we're on, right? And I went away and I thought to myself, well, how are we going to do that? I have no idea, right? I had no idea what I was going to do. And I thought, well, I better come up with something. And as I was thinking about it, I was thinking to myself, actually, what do I mean when I say what process we're on, right? Everything can be broken down to a process. And if you want to know about the different psychological ideologies around the process of human development, then check out the Monday Mindset video. But what I'm going to say here is this, is that there are so many different ideologies, right? Theoretical ideologies that I could employ here to help somebody to be able to identify what kind of process they're in and where they're at on that process. But I thought about it and I thought, actually, I have my own process, right? That I believe is really helpful in being able to understand how to understand where you're at. And I'm all about emotional intelligence, right? Because I think it really is the key to absolutely everything. It's the key to surviving. It's the key to thriving. It's the key to, evolving as an individual, as a community, as a society, as a world, right? And I think it's something that is both growing and depleting at the same time in different areas. I'm not going to go into the whole social commentary on that, but I already have a process. My process is called the emotional intelligence process. And my understanding of emotional intelligence is that there's this process where it goes from your head to your heart to your body, right? And what that means is and there's a whole video about it, and I'll find it and I'll put it up here where it explains it really clearly. But to break it down in a very simple way, what it means is this, is that once you can quantify things in your mind, once you can understand something to the point that it's no longer subjective and it's more objective, once you can see something from a lot of different perspectives, it creates that detachment, it creates that distance between you and your thoughts, between you and your behaviors, between you and the circumstances, between you and the environment, right? So you don't feel like you're just the person in the story, you feel like you're the person narrating the story. That naturally allows things to drop into your heart, because once you understand, for example, someone did you wrong, maybe a parent, right? A parent did you wrong, they didn't raise you properly, they did all sorts of atrocities to you. Once you can understand from your mind why somebody might have done that, and start to see things from their perspective, and start to understand that there isn't just this one viewpoint of things, there isn't just this one story, this one narrative, there's an entire narrative that's happening, right? That naturally allows you to drop into your heart. It allows you to drop into that space where you're like, you know what? I feel like I can forgive this person for all of these atrocities, because it wasn't really actually personal. Like, it felt very personal at the time and it's affected me in a personal way or whatever, but like, it actually wasn't personal. It was just a story, right? Forgiving others then allows you to start forgiving yourself, to be able to say, you know what? I actually forgive myself for allowing that thing to happen, for allowing that person to treat me that way, for not having my boundaries, for not respecting myself enough, for not demanding more, for not standing up for myself when I needed to, whatever, right? For continuing to have this relationship, or continuing to be that person in that role in this relationship, right? For forgiving my mom for all of the shit that she did and still turning up to help her screw in light bulbs or whatever, right? It allows you to kind of forgive yourself for those sorts of things. And then once you've got to that point of like compassion, both compassion for others and self-compassion, that really allows you to then really, truly, honestly discover what's going on in your body. Because these things happen in our body all the time anyway, right? But a lot of the time we distort it, or we deny it, or we avoid it, or we pretend that it's something else, or we, just ignorance is bliss, yeah? I'm angry because of you and because of something you did, rather than my body is feeling anger at this moment in time, because it's resonating, that anger, from this really old wound that I have that I've not really dealt with, and this situation that feels a lot the same as this old wound, this trauma that I haven't dealt with. So being able to drop into the body and doing that kind of somatic release, it really allows you to not ignore those feelings. It allows you to really go through the pain of whatever it is that you need to go through to release it. And then rather than it being like a tidal wave every single time an emotion hits you, that tidal wave's already gone. So it's just like a nice little stream, right? So what I thought we would do today, rather than like, a meditation or visualization or a somatic practice, I thought that I would take you through what I call the emotional intelligence process, what did I call it? I know what my stuff's called, self-screening tool. This is a tool, right, that is designed to help you kind of notice where you get stuck moving through this emotional intelligence process. So are you stuck in the head? Are you stuck in the heart? Are you stuck in the body, right? And what it has is it has 3 questions within each section. So within the head, within the heart, within the body, and then there's a full section that's around patterns, because a lot of this is about being able to identify patterns that we're in, or patterns of our environment, or patterns of our trauma and whatever else, right? So these questions grow progressively more challenging in each stage. And what it is it's about being able to see if you feel resistance at any particular point, because that's going to be like telling you, it's going to be signaling to you where that block might be, right? And it's not really about it being, your answers being right or wrong. It's about kind of like discovering where your edge is. Like, where's the edge that I feel discomfort to go past? And it's going to tell you a lot about where you are in this process, right? Okay, what else did I write down? Okay, so yeah, I think it's really important to move through these questions really honestly. Nobody's going to read it. Nobody's going to be here. Nobody needs to know what it is that you're saying. Nobody needs to know where you're stuck in the process. It's not about being an overachiever and being able to say, I'm right at the end of the process, because being at the end of the process doesn't mean that you won anything. You haven't clocked nothing. Yeah, it just means that you're going to start the process again in a different area on a next level, right? Like going up octaves. Okay, what else? So yes, if you get stuck, if you blank out, if you get triggered, if you're resistant, yeah, that's the point. That's the point of the questions. That's what you want them to do, so that it shows you truly where you're at. Yeah. And that, again, that sticking point is kind of like a signal of where it is that the work needs to begin. All right. So that is, I would say, how to use this tool. I think grab your journal, if you journal, right? If not, a bit of paper. Try and use a paper and a pen. I always find like writing stuff allows your thoughts to flow a lot easier. What I'm going to do is I'm going to ask these questions, and then I'm going to give a little bit of time and space for you to sit and reflect on them, to write something down. Yeah? Okay, so if you're ready to begin, let's start with the first question. So we're going to start in the head. And starting in this position is about being able to understand the story. So the block that you might identify is being rigid in your cognitive thoughts. So cognitive rigidity, being stuck in mental chatter, not being able to control what the mind is saying to you, or a level of over-identification with your thoughts. So question 1. What's the sentence your mind repeats about you most often? For example, I'm not good enough. I can't trust anyone. I have to be strong. And what does that sentence mean about you? For example, what kind of person does it make you feel like? Or what does it say about your life in general? I repeat again. What's the sentence your mind repeats about you most often? And what does that sentence mean about you? If you struggle here, it may relate to not recognizing your inner narrative or avoiding the deeper meaning it carries in how you see yourself in the world. Question 2. Think of a painful situation. Write 3 completely different explanations for why it happened, including one that makes you uncomfortable. I repeat, think of a painful situation. Write 3 completely different explanations for why it happened, including one that makes you uncomfortable. If you get stuck here, it may relate to difficulty holding multiple perspectives, a tendency towards one truth, or a defensiveness against challenge. Question 3. Write down the ugliest sentence your mind throws at you. Now, write down the counter-argument as if you were defending your very best friend. I repeat, write down the ugliest sentence your mind throws at you. Now write the counter-argument as if you were defending your very best friend. If you struggle here, it may relate to identifying so strongly with thoughts that you can't step outside them to see another view. And now let's think about the heart. The process of becoming open to compassion. So some of the blocks that you might experience here could be judgment, bitterness, self-criticism, or an inability to forgive. Question 1. What mistake or choice from your past do you still beat yourself up for? Now, if your best friend told you this story, how would you respond to them? I repeat, what mistake or choice from your past do you still beat yourself up for? And if your best friend told you this story, how would you respond to them? So if you struggle here, it may relate to self-judgment and perfectionism, making compassion harder to access. Question 2. Recall someone who betrayed or hurt you. If you were to tell their story from their point of view, what would it sound like? I repeat, recall someone who betrayed or hurt you. If you were to tell their story from their point of view, what would it sound like? If you get stuck here, it may relate to difficulty separating compassion from justification, or perhaps a fear that empathy equals weakness. Question 3. Write a letter to that person explaining why it was completely and wholly necessary they did what they did, and what you learned because of it. I repeat, write a letter to that person explaining why it was completely and wholly necessary they did what they did, and what you learned because of it. So if you struggle here, it may relate to holding onto pain as identity, or a fear of releasing blame because it feels like letting someone off the hook. So let's move on to body. The idea of releasing the energy. Blocks here could include the avoidance of sensation, a fear of being overwhelmed, or trauma stored in the body. So question 1. When strong emotions show up, where do you feel them first in your body? Describe the sensations. Maybe a tightness in your chest, a heavy stomach, a buzzing energy. Try to use as many descriptive words as possible so you can really capture the detail and feel into it. I repeat, when strong emotions show up, where do you feel them first in your body? Describe the sensation and use as many descriptive words as possible. So if you get stuck here, it may relate to a disconnection from body signals, or habitually numbing or distracting instead of feeling. Question 2. Recall a memory that makes your body react. Maybe tighten or shake or cry. And now just sit in that sensation for 2 minutes. What happened? I repeat, recall a memory that makes your body react, and sit in that sensation for 2 minutes and notice what happened. So if you struggle here, it may relate to the avoidance of discomfort, a fear of intensity, or a lack of safety in sitting with emotion. Question 3. If your body could express this pain without words, how would it move or sound right now? Would it cry? Would it laugh? Would it shake? Would it scream? Try it. Just for 30 seconds. And then write what shifted. I repeat. If your body could express this pain without words, how would it move or sound right now? Try it for 30 seconds and then write down what shifted. If you get stuck here, it may relate to resistance to release, a fear of losing control, or unprocessed trauma needing safe guidance. Okay, hey, welcome back. So yeah, I'm wondering how that felt going through that process. I think it can be really revealing, and I'm wondering what stage for you felt like the hardest stage to be in. Was it the head? Was it the heart? Was it the body? Or was it understanding the kind of overall patterns? You know, where did you feel that strongest resistance? Was it a particular question? Was it a particular area? And what do you feel like it is that you might be resisting in that place? What else? What surprised you? What surprised you most about the answers that you wrote? And what I would say is, with that, maybe just give it a day or two and then look back again, reread it, see what comes up when you're in a different space and what feels right and what feels surprising. Yeah. But I think for today, that's it. That's a lot of heavy work. So take a second, like really do take some time to just sit down and breathe. That's a lot of deep work that you just did. So well done. Well done. Honestly, well done. I'm not laughing at you. I'm laughing at me because I thought it would be fun to do that. But yeah, well done to you for going through it. And yeah, I hope that that was helpful. If nothing else, that it was revealing, that it felt beneficial, right? And supportive to go through that process. But for now, that's it. Come back tomorrow for Reflection Friday. I'm going to be there. We'll be in community together, wrapping the week up. All right, cool. But for now, that is it. That's it.
That resistance you felt during certain questions, that's not failure, that's revelation. Drop a comment about which stage felt hardest, head, heart, or body. Tomorrow's Reflection Friday integrates this week's journey from understanding developmental processes to finding where you personally get stuck.